being on camera. Hello. Hey guys, Elisa Wallace here. Welcome to my vlog. This week, I'm going to talk about how I create my schedule for my horses. So the first thing to consider is what's your goal. So determining the goal for each horse. Outlining for me the big 3 days each year. Generally my horses will do 2, depends on the horse. I set my goal for the 3-day and then work my way back. And that works for conditioning as well, because I have that big 3-day that I want my horses to peak at conditioning wise, and then I'm going to work my way back. Things that I consider when choosing events, it's tailored to each horse on an individualized basis. For me, I'm going to look at qualifications kind of first, what I need to qualify to go to that 3-day. Then there are going to be other considerations like footing, course design, then also the events that I really like. So I have favorite events that I like to go to, and then other events that maybe are not so much. How many events kind of depends on the horse. So the more experienced horse you have, kind of the less events you have to do, and vice versa. The greener the horse, kind of most of the times you have to do more events. I've been asked that question of how I manage like Johnny, who's an older horse, and keeping him sound, and it was saving him for certain events where I knew the footing was perfect and I knew the courses that benefited him and his style and certain things like that. So it's very tailored in making the right choices for your horse. In the end, that is always the first consideration, is your horse. Always, always, always. Prize money is great. We don't have a lot of it in our sport, but when we do, it's fantastic. So typically the first events of the year, I'm going to run a level below. Kind of really make sure they're nice and confident. The courses tend to be a little softer. It's kind of to knock the rust off and kind of get the horses eased back into it. We're not kind of going out hell-bent making time. I kind of want to make sure my horses are listening and on the aids, and I mean, it's nice to go and be competitive, and oftentimes you can be, but I'm going to go out with a plan of not necessarily coming in 30 seconds under time. You always have to do what's best for your horse in that moment. The initial schedule I create is basically if the stars aligned and your fingers are crossed and everything goes right for you, that's your plan A. Then you have to factor in your plan B, C, and D if something happens. For instance, if you have a training blip.
Well, that was unexpected.
Maybe your horse doesn't just feel right and you gotta back off a little bit, and so you have to be kind of open to, what is it? There's many roads that lead to Rome or something like that. Whatever you do in your training, the goal is to make sure you can be successful. For Ocala, the reason why we moved down here was the accessibility to preparing my horses. So there's lots of schooling shows, cross-country schooling that we're able to do. So it's really great because, again, once I get that kind of bare bones schedule of the big events that I want to do, I can then fill in with the schooling events. Like I said, with the greener horses, it's great, and it can be more money efficient as well to run the schooling shows, to really prepare and not always have to do the recognized shows. And it's great to support our local people. I like to kind of do my spring scheduling, and then my horses have time off in the summer, and then they will have a fall schedule, and then they have time off in the winter. Seems to work out pretty well for them. I have my idea for my scheduling from, say, January to June, and of course then I'm having to schedule clinics and demos or lessons or what have you, kind of in between that. But then kind of once I get into how the season is going with the horses and how they're feeling in their training and how they're feeling with their confidence and everything like that, then I can start to think about what's going to happen in June. You kind of want to set your bar, whatever your goal is, and then have your plan A, B, and C, and D after that. There have been times where I had planned on doing a certain level, and then that horse actually needed more time at the lower level, so I spent the rest of that year at the lower level and then moving them up the following year to make sure that they are right and have the correct training and confidence and strength. Because again, our goal is to be successful. So how I schedule multiple horses, multiple level of horses. So obviously what is the most logical is the higher the level of the horse trumps the lower level horses. Now oftentimes the lower level horses, they just need more time in their training. I tend to look for the bigger events for my bigger horses, and then it's just filling in the gaps. And then I'm able to then go back with, say, my novice horses and look at their plan for the year and where I want them and how I want them to move up. And then I put in their events in between the big horse events. Because for me, I really only like to compete for 5 at max. 5 is almost too much, especially when I have prelim and above horses. Other people do more, but I feel like for me, my focus is better on 4, if not less. I do find cross training to be really important, so I love the sport of eventing. I'm very blessed to do that, be able to do that sport, and I have horses that love that sport, but I do think cross training is really important. Now Ocala has the World Equestrian Center that's opened up, so that's even more awesome because they'll have dressage shows, the jumper shows, we have hits as well that we are able to do. And I have a background as well as doing the hunters and jumpers back when I was a kid, did the equitation and stuff. It is nice to kind of step out and get education from all different disciplines, and so that's where too the Mustangs play a part, and it is fun to go do the Mustang shows, and sometimes that's a little bit more Western. And I just like to, I don't know, broaden my skills and not just necessarily be limited to one sport, because I think the more tools in your toolbox, the more things you can fix. It can get pretty busy when we're doing something every weekend, but that something isn't always a horse trial. It might be take a lesson with anchors. I have to have some weekends open in order to also have training myself, which is beneficial. Typically for me, my break comes after Kentucky. After April and May, I take a couple of days. Or during the summer when it's generally after the 3-day. So I can take a deep breath. The horses are on vacation, or the big horses at least. I can focus and play with the green horses and kind of go from there. But it's always hard for me to want to take a day off or a couple of days off. That's always a little hard in scheduling. But then I also do have to put if we're talking about scheduling, I have to talk about scheduling time for my marriage and certain things like that. People. The season is kind of, it's all about the horses. It's what's best for them and tailoring everything around them. Their conditioning schedule, if that's doing the water treadmill and scheduling that, going on their trots, scheduling the gallops. Once you get your competition schedule, there's so many schedules. Say, for instance, this year I have January to June, and again I have to make sure I manage how my horses peak and what I want that to look at, and so how I'm starting to condition them and where their gallops and their trots, and using events for conditioning as well. Certain events that have some terrain, you're going to use that cross country as your gallop for that week to get those horses ready. It all depends on the horse, really. For instance, like last year, I chose to run just Sharpie at Red Hills, not really anybody else, because Sharpie does really good with kind of twisty-turny, kind of lots of terrain, and I have other horses that aren't necessarily great with twisty-turny and terrain, so, for instance, last year when I ran my horses at Stableview, they were covered, they were on it, and I knew I was going to have them peak too soon if I wasn't careful, so I actually backed down off of their gallop scheduling because I needed them to peak at the right time, and I almost had them too fit at Tryon because they were quite wild. I'd rather have too fit of a horse than an underfit horse. I tend to always give my dad a chat, and we tend to go over the schedule together because we're part of the group. So it's nice to have that support on each side, and we bounce ideas off of each other. And the same goes, I'll call up my friend Lenny Ashker, and we kind of try to do the same thing, see if we can meet up at events. And then also talking through kind of with both of them and bouncing ideas off of what horses I should run where, or what events do we think are good for certain things. So it's nice to have that support. I definitely like staying in my dad's trailer too. That's a benefit. It's a little bit safer in traveling in case, because we've had scenarios where my dad's tires have blown, and you know, it's nice to kind of tag team, and we do travel alone too. For the most part, we're at every event together. It helps me when I have to go through, and on my sheet of paper I put the months in blocks. I write a square around them and I give a big gap, and then I go through and I look at the omnibus on US Eventing. I have the events that I like to go to, and then I mean, that's the other thing too, is once I figure out what horse runs well where, it's a lot of words in one sentence, and if it works and the horse is fit and does well and everything's great, then I generally will kind of mirror that same competition schedule for the next year. So in the end, it's really about doing what's best for your horse and making sure you're tailoring everything to them, and also making sure that you can check your goals off. Hope you enjoyed this vlog. A big thank you to my Patreons. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the little bell at the bottom so you're notified for every video.